Hello, political scientists! It's been a while. It's time for the next instalment of Ministerial Responsibility. We got as far as the idea of Hancock talking about coronavirus, and we're still in the middle of the pandemic, so it's still relevant. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk a little bit more, as I move my camera, sorry, bad YouTube etiquette. I'm going to talk a little bit more about personal conduct. I wanted to talk about Chris Huhne last time, and he's a fascinating character. You might know of him, you might not, but as political scientists, trust me, he's a good example. And we're going to go through some examples of individual ministerial responsibility that led to resignations, and the resignations are instructive because they show us the circumstances in which this takes place. Also, we're going to be looking at collective ministerial responsibility. Now, in terms of the amount of notes you're about to make, they aren't going to be as extensive as we make usually in a half-hour video. What I intend to do today, therefore, is get through this with a lot of examples and a lot of extra video clips because it's interesting and important, so that you can use these examples more effectively in an exam. As we move forward and talk about prime ministerial powers and choosing cabinet and what have you, we'll go back to a normal way of doing things where you get the standard sort of half hour to an hour of input that you can then make notes out of. This is a lot of examples and therefore a lot of video clips to watch, some of which are quite lengthy. And so although I'm posting this on the afternoon of Tuesday, there will be an expectation that it overruns into next lessons on tomorrow. So we'll see how it goes. It'll be at least a double lesson, possibly more. I'll try and keep the timing of the video down as much as I can, because there's a lot of video clips. If I was in a classroom, if you and I were together, we could show these and I could talk over them and discuss them. I can't really do that as effectively on this recording getup. I mean, I can on OBS, this particular getup, but copyright and other issues. Basically, look down below. I've got all the descriptions below, and have a go at watching them when they pop up. You've also got access to the PowerPoint, so if you prefer, you can simply click on the links when they turn up on the animations. You'll notice that it's heavily layered though, so I apologise about that. I mean, not too much, otherwise I just wouldn't do it. So, let us move on. We left the story with Hancock and the video that connected to that. And I said I wanted to talk about Chris Huhne, so I guess I need to talk about Chris Huhne. Let's talk about the personal conduct of ministers and the ministerial code, rather, on how that works in terms of high personal standards. And I just noticed that the thing behind him doesn't fade out. I hope that isn't going to cause problems as we move forward. Anyway, the personal conduct. The ministerial code says that an individual MP or a cabinet minister has to show high personal standards in public. They must show that they are fit for office. Chris Huhne was an MP and a cabinet minister in 2012, and he was energy secretary. And he was, well, the case revolves around the perversion of justice, which sounds far more exciting than it is. Basically, he got a speeding ticket, he was caught on camera, and he said that he wasn't the driver of the car at the time, and got his wife to testify to the effect that she was driving the car so that the points would go on her licence. This is standard for powerful heterosexual men who, well, they drive quickly. They feel that their time is important. And whilst they feel that they are personally justified, otherwise they wouldn't do it, they recognise that it looks bad when you're in a government job. Furthermore, if he got the points on his licence, he'd be disqualified from driving. Now, it shouldn't be a problem for a government minister. They get chauffeurs. They get government cars. But on a personal heterosexual male level, it's obviously a power play. Forgive me, I'm doing sociology at politics again. I always do. Yeah, that's what's going on here. That's why he lied, essentially. And, yeah, her friend, his wife's friend, whom she told the story, then released it to the newspapers. Then it became a public matter. Then the court had to get involved because, frankly, why is it not? There we go. Then the court got involved because, well, that was a perversion of justice. He was found guilty, and they were both, him and his wife, sent to jail, to prison after their conviction. By that point, Chris Huhne had resigned. If you click on the link at the bottom there, you'll find his very short statement, it's about 45 seconds, explaining his resignation and explaining what was going on. That came as something of a shock to the media. Basically, he tried to beat the story out. To some extent it kind of worked, but it showed the potential problems of being a cabinet minister and being caught lying, and therefore it shows the power of the ministerial code when it comes to cabinet ministers. So pause the video now, go have a watch of that 45-second clip. Okay, moving on. My next example, none of these animations are working. Curses. I'm going to have to go back in and fix these at another point. I apologise, this is going to get messy. Was Fallon in 2017 as Defence Secretary. Now this is even more weird. It was about alleged sexual assault or alleged sexual misconduct. And it's worth noting that although allegations had been made, there was nothing definite. No one had really come forward, the press wasn't really talking about it, it wasn't really an issue. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he resigned. And his explanation was that he accepted his past behaviour toward women had, and I quote, fallen below the high standards that we require of the armed forces. An odd way of phrasing it. He resigned, apparently, to prevent effects of public allegations on the government. Successfully, as it turned out, because it was a non-story. People were so nonplussed, people were so confused that no one saw it coming and no one knew what to do with the information. The clip at the bottom there is the news story that broke after the fact, because I couldn't find his actual resignation statement. I think it's embedded in the news story. So there's an interesting one. He beat the story out so comprehensively that he effectively prevented any kind of issue reflecting on the government. So we'll see what we can do on that one. Finally, and yeah, it's all broken. I wonder if they go away in a moment. Finally, there's Priti Patel in 2017. She was the Overseas Development Secretary, and she was holding private meetings with Israeli ministers. Now, the clip that I've linked in the link is fascinating because she doesn't describe it in the same way. Rather, she seems to suggest that they are personal friends and that she was meeting people in a personal and private capacity. She wasn't going to resign. She went on holiday to Israel, met with many high-ranking members of the Israeli government, including the leader of the Israeli government, Benjamin Netanyahu, who was known to be a bit of, well, he is still a bit of a right-wing leader. And there are political issues in supporting the Israeli government, given what they're proposing and were proposing at the time to do. They have an ethno-nationalistic law which says that only Jews can be citizens of Israel. Consider that for a moment when you realise that they own territory where people who are not Jewish, racially or religiously, live. They are not allowed to be citizens. That's an interesting statement. And they have an almost semi-apartheid regime in some areas of the country that is widely supported by the ethnic population of Jews. Now, I'm not suggesting that this somehow reflects on Judaism. It doesn't in any way, shape or form. This is purely the weird overlap of ethnicity and religion and the fact that Israel has defined itself as a Jewish state. So there's a lot of weird overlap there, but you see where I'm coming from. It's a difficult country to deal with and to be seen to be dealing with. So Priti Patel had clearly done something beyond what she claims in the clip at the bottom there. Go and have a watch of it if you want. At any point now you can pause. These private meetings were not declared when she came back from her holiday. Now, whatever was in those private meetings almost doesn't matter. The point is she's supposed to tell her department, or at least her boss. Her boss at the time, being the cabinet minister, would be Theresa May, the Prime Minister. Theresa May called for a meeting in which she applied pressure, and afterwards she resigned for not passing on significant content to a department or government. She did not accept that what she did was wrong. She simply suggested that she should have passed on what had been discussed, significant content. was what was said. Now that this is a strange one, because it does two things. It shows the element of personal conduct and the ministerial code. She'd broken the ministerial code. That was the exact phrasing of the ministerial code, that if you have a private meeting, you should pass on any significant outcomes to your department head, or at least your department. She should have told the civil servants in charge of the development office, but she didn't. So something had gone down, but she never ever admitted error. The fact that she was reappointed as a cabinet minister under Boris Johnson just 2 years later says something about how Boris Johnson views what she did, and also tells you something about the longevity of these ideas of ministerial responsibility and how it affects individuals in certain areas. Now, is my animation working? No. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this particular, I'll do 2 short videos. This one is approximately 10 and a bit minutes long, plus those video clips. I reckon it's about half a lesson for you to work through on that and on the notes. I shall be back when I've fixed the animations. You'd think I'd check these things in advance, but apparently not, for the next section. So yes, thank you if you have been for watching, and you'll see the next part surface very shortly.